Well, welcome back, everybody, to our Christmas Eve episode of Hot Cocoa and a Christmas Story. I've just had a blast being able to tell these stories again. Like I said, these were stories that have been told over the past 20 years, and have just really enjoyed being able to share them with you. We have one story left, and this is probably the granddaddy of all stories. All right, no pun intended. You'll get that later, I suppose. But this was the story that was personal to me, that different than all the other stories that I wrote. It's just different than the others, but in a good way. And this is a story that I get more requests for to come back to and to read and to do. And it's a story called An Evening with Saint Nick. And it was a story that was written to give honor to my grandfather. So my grandfather was a pastor, and he passed away when I was late elementary school, early middle school, 5th, 6th grade, something like that. So it's been a while since he passed away. And we were always traveling in the military, but I had a few short years. He came and preached at our church in Guam for a while, and really got to spend some time with him. I remember flying a humongous kite. It probably isn't as big as I thought it was, but a humongous kite that I couldn't hold without it pulling me across the sands, and he would have to hold me there. And he was the guy that let us do the things that we weren't supposed to do. And as I got older and wanted to learn more about him and read more things about him, the more I realized that he is a part of me, through what he has given to me, and then also through what he has passed down through my dad and then to me, and then hopefully that I pass down to my kids. And so I wrote this story to honor him and to celebrate what his passion was, celebrate his passion for reaching people for Christ. And so I want to share with you the story, An Evening with Saint Nick. Cleaning's often a very tedious task for me. I can't just put things away, but I have to look at every single item, every picture, every scrap of paper. Piles of junk can become walks down memory lane. Cleaning out a storage shed or an old junk closet can send you back even farther. But there's nothing more nostalgic than cleaning out your grandmother's attic. What if, while cleaning out that attic, you found an old box, a box that has gathered dust throughout the years and contains page after page of old newspaper clippings from Christmases long time ago. And in the bottom of that box, there was a handwritten journal, and there was an entry in it titled, An Evening with Saint Nick. It's a cold night in Kansas City, December 24th, 1942. My son is just 3.5 months old. The United States is in the middle of a war, and though I am starting seminary, the Lord only knows when my name will be called. We are poor, but everyone is poor. It just concerns me more now because I'm a father. I work steadily around my class schedules, building airplanes for the Army, and I pray that each plane will bear our boys home safely at the end of the day. School has been out of session for nearly 2 weeks, so I've been able to put in extra work at the plant, earning money we'll need since the plant was closed Wednesday, today, and it will be on Christmas. It is late, and I'm up alone. Iola goes to bed early now because Michael Phillip will be up in the middle of the night for another feeding. It has given me some time to wrap up a few presents and set things up for breakfast tomorrow. We're having pancakes, just like my father taught me how to make. The embers of the fire are still warm, but the flame is nearly out. The coffee in the percolator is finished. I don't drink much at night, but when the fire finally goes out, it's nice to have something warm. In the kitchen, I top off my cup, and as I set down the coffee pot, I hear a loud thump. A large load of snow must have finally dislodged from the roof and slid onto the porch out back. I'm definitely going to have to shovel out the car tomorrow. Or perhaps on Saturday, since we won't be getting out on Christmas. But it wasn't snow that had fallen off the roof after all. As I returned to the living room, what I saw you might not believe. There on my hearth sat an old man with a long white beard. He had a small brush and a little dustpan with which he cleaned up the soot off of his bright red pants and black leather boots. His coat had a large red hood that was lined with fur. He paid me no mind, just tended to his business. Then, without looking up, he spoke in a deep, sonorous voice. "Lowell, it is good to see you all grown up." I didn't know what to say, and perhaps by habit I stated, "It's Dennis. I go by my middle name now. And may I ask, who are you?" "I am Nicholas," and he extended his white-gloved hand to me. "You mean Saint Nicholas?" "I deserve the title saint no more than any of God's children who have been sanctified. Still, I suppose there are those who do call me Saint Nicholas. But please, if you would, just call me Nicholas." I invited Nicholas to stay for a cup of coffee, and to my surprise, he pulled back his hood, took off his coat, and sat down on the couch. The coffee was still warm and steamed as I filled my largest coffee mug. Nicholas took a moment just to hold the cup, then began a long, slow slip. The red from his cheeks and nose gradually faded as the warmth of the coffee flowed through his body. "It's been a long time since I visited you, Dennis." Growing older had caused my need for Nicholas to visit to become less. I was somewhere between 10 and 12 when I realized that I was going to be just fine and Nicholas would be better served helping those who were younger and truly in need. I responded, "That was 20 years ago now. Why come back tonight?" No, not for you, Lowell." "Pardon, Dennis." "Am I not right in thinking you now have a son, Michael Phillip?" "Well, yes. Iola and I were blessed in September with our first son. I'm fortunate. He looks like his mother, red hair, freckles, and a smile." "It is to bring a special gift for Michael Phillip that I have come to you today. Each parent has dreams and aspirations for his child. I try to match a newborn's first gift with those wishes." He took another sip and leaned back on the couch. "How do you know what gift to give each newborn?" "Oh, I ask the parents. It is such a joy for me to see a new generation passing on the love and wisdom that was once given to them so many years ago." He finished his coffee with one large drink and placed it on the coffee table. And leaning forward, "So, what are your hopes for little Michael? A baseball player? I have a bag full of balls. Perhaps you want him to be a scholar. I have brought some great books. Tell me your dreams." What Nicholas was asking took me by surprise. Had my parents dreamed that I would be a preacher? Certainly not. Would my wish today forever put Michael on a path totally apart from his choosing? "Nicholas, you cannot expect me to make such a decision in one evening. There are too many things to consider, too many pitfalls." "Dennis, do not worry. You're not etching in stone your child's future. I ask only that you think about your part in the rearing of Michael. I visit too many children whose parents have neglected their duty to teach them the difference between right and wrong. I see kids who are mean and kids who are spoiled. I see kids who are rebellious and those who are faithless. I want to encourage you to not wait until it's too late to raise little Michael Phillip as he ought to be raised. I've always dreamed for Michael, but I do not think that's necessarily what you're asking about." "Why not just tell me? I've heard more varied dreams than you could imagine. Perhaps your thoughts are not so far off as you might think." "Well, we live in a changing world, Nicholas, and I have no way of knowing how Michael might fit into that world. But wherever he goes, whatever he does, I want him to be faithful to God. Is there any way you can grant me such a gift?" And Nicholas did not move. We sat for a moment, and I worried. Had I offended the old man? And then I saw a single tear running down his left cheek. The cheek that had been chapped and dried from the cold. "Dennis, that is the only gift I ever wanted to give." He wiped his face clean with an ornate handkerchief, then looked straight at me. "Dennis, do you know why I started doing what I do?" "Well, there sure are plenty of stories, but I can't say that I know which ones are true." "I was a wealthy man. I had everything that I could possibly gather to myself. I had a large mansion, and I ate the best foods. I felt like I owned the world. But one day the bishop from the local parish came to the house. It was bitterly cold, and the snow came up to his knees. I ushered him into the house and placed him by my fire to warm him up. But before I even settled down, he asked me, 'Child, are you happy?'" Nicholas's voice began to waver as he produced the kerchief once more time to dab his eyes. I told him that I was indeed happy. Then he asked, "Are you joyful?" "What's the difference?" I replied to him. "Come with me and I will show you, but I will need one of your servants to bring a few items for me." I was too curious, so as I grabbed my coat, I had the bishop speak with my servants about items he would need. I rode with the bishop as he assured me that the servants would not be far behind us. His small, overworked horse struggled to take us into town as he hit patches of ice, then puddles of mud. Slowly we traveled until we arrived at the town's large meeting hall. We disembarked from the small sledge and entered the building only to find that we were not alone. The hall was filled with the dregs of humanity. They were dirty, and some were drunk, and all were cold. We walked slowly around the people huddled there. Small children gathered near their parents. An older man stared blankly at the wall. Misery could be seen on every face. "How is this supposed to bring me joy?" I inquired of the bishop. "Patience, young man. I believe I hear the bells of your horses now. Let us go outside and see what your servant has brought." We went outside, and if it was possible, it seemed warmer in the falling snow than inside the building. The servant spoke up. "I brought what I was asked to, but I do not know if I should have without discussing with you first." "Well, what have you brought?" I demanded. "I have firewood and blankets, and though it was hard to convince him, your cook is now butchering one of your cows, and he will be here with meat soon." My heart broke. Inside my house, I had enough to care for all of those who were here, and more. I turned to my servant. "Why are you still here? Get these blankets inside. Start a fire in every fireplace. Get some water boiling." As I re-entered the hall, I had noticed a change. I saw hope on the faces of the people. I saw peace sweeping through families. Most of all, I saw people filled with joy. Nicholas's face beamed as he recounted these events from his past. I motioned to rise, but Nicholas continued his story. The bishop made his way over to me after the meat had arrived and was cooking on spits and boiling in stew over every fireplace. You've given so much to these people, and they have been filled with joy. What may I give you?" The bishop was sincere, but I thought naive. "There's nothing you can give me that I do not already have." "You mean there's no gift, no matter how great, that you do not already possess?" "Yes, or that I could possess it if I chose to." What the bishop would say next would change my life. "All your wealth and prizes have not brought you joy. But today you have seen joy enter this very building. When the fire is out and the food is gone, many here will be hungry and cold again. But there is a joy that does not fail. Today is the day we celebrate the birth of Jesus. And when he was born, these words were proclaimed about him. 'Do not be afraid, for behold, I bring you good tidings of great joy, which will be to all people. For there is born to you this day in the city of David a Savior who is Christ the Lord. Glory to God in the highest, and on earth peace, goodwill to men.'" Dennis, it was that Christmas day that I learned where real joy comes from. It was from lessons given by that bishop that I have realized fulfillment and faithfulness to God was the most precious thing a person could have. You can imagine, I'm not the first St. Nicholas, but once every couple 100 years a mantle gets passed on. It was when I determined to continue to give gifts and spread joy in the hopes that there might be one more person who would come to know the truth about where real joy comes from that Well, I was given an ever greater chance to share my gifts and spread joy. I sat mesmerized by Nicholas's story. I did not want this evening to end, but an end must come to all good things. Nicholas rose, grabbed his coat, and began to put it on. Do you know, Dennis, that you and I are not too different? No? How so? Both of us want to spread the message of the gospel. You just are blessed to have the opportunity to do it every week. I am proud of you, Lowell. And as he said the last, he winked at me. He grabbed his large sack and he headed toward the hearth. He suddenly stopped as if he had forgotten something and simply turned his head and looked at me. Have you ever wondered why there are so many angels and stars used to decorate during Christmas time? I shook my head no. They are something I began using years ago. You see, in the Nativity story, it was the angels and the star that pointed people to where Christ was. I suppose I, in a small way, had hoped that they would continue to point people in the same direction, even today. If you want Michael to be faithful, you be that star and point him to the Christ. And with that statement, he quickly reached into his bag and produced a simple wooden star and handed it to me. I looked at the star. On it was a small tag that read to Michael Philip Barnes. I turned it over, and on the back it was signed Nicholas. I looked up to wish Nicholas a good night, but when I did, he was gone. I was standing alone, in the dark, holding a star, and was full of joy. The postlude of the story, Lowell Dennis Barnes, lived 40 more years as a shining star for Iola, his wife, Michael, his son, and the daughter he named Carol, maybe like a Christmas carol. Jennifer, Peter, Amy, myself, Philip, Matthew and David, his grandchildren, and countless people he served in churches and as a hospital chaplain. He was actually laid to rest on Christmas Eve as carolers around the world sang joy to the world. Loved ones traveled far to be with families, and countless children gathered near their Christmas trees under the star to await their evening with St. Nick. God bless you all, and I hope you all have a wonderful Christmas. And I hope above all else, my mom was reminding me even just today, make sure you remind people that Christmas is about Jesus. That star, those angels, that evergreen, everything we do to point people to Jesus. And my prayer is that you have been pointed to Jesus through the stories that we've told, and the sermons we've done, the songs that we've sung. Merry Christmas to y'all. Merry Christmas. Joy to the world. The Lord has come.